Welcome to the Escape the System channel. I'm back with another reaction video. This time reacting to the recent Channel 4 documentary called Michael Jackson, The Trial, which focused on the 2005 criminal case brought against him by Gavin Arvizo, alleging that there was child molestation involved. Now, I've made a series of these videos before, first of all reacting to Leaving Neverland 1 and 2, then reacting to the Square One documentary as well. I initially started doing it because I wanted to look at the way the media can manipulate people's perceptions, and that's very consistent with the themes, the rest of the themes on this channel, and the themes I also write about in my books. However, the videos proved to be very popular, among some of the most popular on my channel, so I thought I'd keep them going to further explore those themes, but also because this is a very complex, disturbing, but also interesting subject. So what was my point of view going into this documentary? After watching Leaving Neverland and watching Square One as well, I have to say I was verging more on the side that Michael Jackson was innocent of these accusations. Of course, I could never say that with 100% certainty. I was just going by the evidence, by the presentation of these documentaries, what seemed credible and believable to me. And I came to that conclusion. I was leaning towards probably innocent, probably didn't do these things. Now, after watching this recent documentary, Michael Jackson, The Trial, as I mentioned, a 4-part series, each about an hour long, I swayed more towards perhaps he was guilty. Not completely, and I'm going to break down why in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know my biases or my viewpoint going into the documentary and my viewpoint afterwards. Now, first of all, this is really the documentary that Leaving Neverland should have been, because this is far more intelligently made. There is an attempt to present two sides to the story, although you've got to be very careful because there is a clear bias to the documentary. It wants to portray Michael Jackson as a child abuser. That is quite obvious, but it does it in a way that is more credible than Leaving Neverland. So it gives you both sides of the story. They bring out a series of people, and the whole documentary, the reason for the documentary seems to be that, they've unearthed these new video voice recordings of Michael Jackson in 2001 and 2002, and how damning they are. Well, these recordings turn out to be conversations between him and his spiritual advisor, Rabbi Shmuley. And there's nothing really that damaging at all about them. All you really understand from them is that Michael Jackson has a very deep spiritual connection with children, and not in any way sexual is he discussing with Rabbi Shmuley. There's nothing sexual about it whatsoever. He's more talking about this spiritual connection with children, how if he could never see another child, he would want to die because that's his kind of purpose for being. And yeah, you can say that's a little unnerving for a grown man, and I wouldn't disagree with you. But what he's describing in these recorded tape recordings, voice recordings, is a spiritual connection. Nothing more than that. But then the story develops, and it goes on and talks about the Arvizo family, them staying with the Jacksons, and what you see is some of Michael Jackson's private footage with him and Gavin. And Gavin at the time is a cancer patient. He has terminal cancer, and it seems that Michael Jackson, out of the kindness of his heart, is helping this boy to recover, spending time with him. This boy doesn't really have a father. It very much seems like a father-son relationship. And yes, in these videos you see pictures of him walking with his arm around a very sick 10, 11-year-old boy. But you could just say that's, number one, giving the boy physical support because he's very frail. Number two, nothing outside of what you would consider a father-son relationship, even though obviously he's not his actual father, although Gavin does ask if he can refer to him as daddy. So that's the way the dynamic is presented, but then it becomes a little bit more sinister. Then we have the Martin Bashir documentary. I think it was called living with Michael Jackson. Basically, that was a disaster, and it painted him in a really bad light, not only making him look very eccentric and bizarre, but also potentially dangerous and a criminal. And they realized that. Michael Jackson realized it. His team realized it. And what seems to happen after that is they make every attempt to make a sort of rebuttal documentary where they get the Arvizos in a room, they film them, they're saying, you know, did Michael Jackson do anything inappropriate to you? And Gavin Arvizo says, absolutely no way. The mum talks about how much support he gave this boy. And by the way, just as a side note, the boy amazingly recovered from terminal cancer, and everyone in this documentary, the trial documentary, seemed to be shocked. You know, he was set to die. And I wondered when I was watching that, I thought to myself, well, did any of that have to do with Michael Jackson opening his home to him, showing him love, probably, you know, lifting his spirits? That must have been such an amazing thing for that kid to do. And that may have given him that little extra boost of positivity. I'm a big believer in the mind-body connection that could potentially have saved what was deemed a hopeless case of terminal cancer. And if it did, I mean, that family owe Michael Jackson a debt of gratitude. Perhaps even Gavin's life is owed to him. But no, of course, this documentary never stopped to even ponder that question for one moment. They were far more interested in trying to portray Jackson as an abuser and a criminal. So anyway, Jackson is in this situation where, you know, he's worried about this Martin Bashir documentary, how it looks, what's going to happen. So he invites the Arvizos to Neverland. And this brings us on to the strangest point of the whole trial. So apparently, when Michael Jackson was helping Gavin Arvizo during his cancer treatment, you know, having him at the ranch, lifting his spirits, spending time with him, he didn't abuse him at all. No accusations were made at that period of time, even from the Arvizo family. Now, apparently, the abuse occurred after Leaving Neverland went out, and he then invited the family back to his home to try and manage the situation, which seems to be a pretty dumb idea, to be honest. But this is what I find so odd about the whole thing and the trial. If you're Michael Jackson and you're portrayed by the people who are trying to attack him as this scheming mastermind, pedophile, manipulator who's very worried about his public image and hadn't done anything wrong up until this point because he was never charged with anything prior to that, why would you then go and molest this child while you were supposed to be protecting yourself against the very thing they're using to try and bring you down? So you haven't molested him up until this point. But then once living with Michael Jackson, the Martin Bashir documentary comes out, and you bring him there to do damage control on the situation, you then decide to molest him. I mean, that makes zero sense, unless Michael Jackson was so far gone mentally that he thought in any way that was a good idea. So that to me is the big red herring, the big red flag from this whole thing. Why would he have then abused the child once he was trying to damage control the situation? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. We then move on to the coverage of the trial itself. And there's one point I wanted to make about this because this did seem convincing. They showed footage of Gavin Arvizo's police testimonial and confession. And I've got to say, I didn't detect a liar. Nothing sparked off in my mind. So, for example, when I was watching Leaving Neverland, I just couldn't believe Wade Robson at all. James Safechuck was a little more convincing, but again, not entirely. Just I'm talking about general impressions from watching something. I was not convinced by their statements. To me, it felt like they were making things up and lying. However, watching that police interview of Gavin Arvizo, I was thinking, God, this seems quite convincing, the way he's answering these questions. However, that's not to say he might not have been coached beforehand. And as it turns out, and I'm going to make a recommendation if you're interested in this topic, watch a video by a guy called Ken LaCourte. It's called Elephants in the Room, his channel, Elephants in the Room, Ken LaCourte. It's about whether Michael Jackson was a child abuser or not. And he makes some does some very interesting research. And in fact, if you want a truly non-biased documentary or opinion on this, go to him, because he's not trying to sway your opinion one way or the other. He's just presenting facts. And something very interesting that he points out is that Gavin Arvizo's mother tried to bring a lawsuit against security guards at a store called JCPenney, claimed that they sexually abused her or sexually assaulted her and restrained her. And she actually admitted later on, when the court case fell through, that she had coached her son, Gavin, to support her claims. So there is a history of him being coached in courtroom situations. So either she does a very good job of it, because he appears convincing in this interview. So that caused a little bit of doubt in my mind, made me think, oh, well, that boy does seem very convincing. Another thing that was quite convincing in the trial was the mother of Geordie Chandler. She gave testimony. Now, she never said that she saw or was around any kind of abuse from Michael Jackson to Geordie Chandler. She didn't witness any of that. However, she did say that Michael Jackson cried in front of her, begging her to allow Geordie to have sleepovers with him, to spend the night with him, and even gave her gifts and money. And that to me was a little bit suspicious. And I thought, well, why would he do that? I mean, that's, even if there was no wrongdoing involved whatsoever, that's pathetic. Why is a grown man crying to spend the night with children? And I guess it opens up this wider question, what really was Michael Jackson doing with these kids? And I've had quite a lot of praise on my previous videos, a little bit of criticism, and it always goes back to the same point, saying, well, how can you look at this and say that a grown man spending time with 12-year-old kids is ordinary or normal, or normalize the situation? And I've got to agree with that criticism. It's not. Even if Michael Jackson was completely innocent, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest he shouldn't have been spending time with these kids. That's just, there's no, you can play the role of a mentor, fine. You can open Neverland to underprivileged kids and give them an amazing day out, which is all fantastic stuff, which is all innocent, good stuff that he did. But there's no need to be sleeping over with them. It means it's either one of two things. It's either he sees himself as a 13-year-old boy, and this is him having his friends, his mates coming over. He wants to hang out with them. And yeah, I guess 13-year-old, 12-year-old kids maybe cry if their parents don't let them see a friend, or the other parent doesn't let them, perhaps. That is a legitimate explanation because of the way he sees himself. So this is a friend, he really wants to spend time with and hang out with. I guess it's possible. Or the other possibility is the darker motivation, which is pretty appalling to think. There's plenty of grey areas in this documentary. The thing I'm looking forward to now, and the thing I will react to, is the new upcoming film in April. I have a feeling that that's going to be a far more positive spin on the story, and I think it'll just be refreshing to have something positive, a positive spin on the story, because the media just will not give this a break. They seem determined to portray him as a child abuser. And sensation sells. That's what the media does. It's fear and sensation. It's their magic formula. They know after many years that is what is going to grab attention, not stories about how someone's a good, caring person, how he helped others, and dedicated his life to helping a lot of children in a good way, because thousands of kids passed through Neverland and they never got abused. It was clear Michael Jackson had plenty of good motivation to kids and just wanted to help them a lot, The question is, were there those one or two that he abused as well? It seems pretty inconsistent with somebody who genuinely wants to help. If you look at Jimmy Savile, a notorious child abuser in the UK, he also worked at hospitals and allegedly helped children, but he did that to gain access to vulnerable children who he then abused. Michael Jackson let thousands of kids into the ranch on days out, and he wasn't abusing any of them. It was simply for them to have a good time, for them to enjoy the fairground, to them to have an uplifting day. He clearly got satisfaction from doing that. It wasn't just about abuse, if he even abused them at all. So another video reacted to. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As I said, I'll watch the upcoming movie and I'll share my reaction with that as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.